Hello and welcome to Grow Conversations, your window into the world of medical cannabis here in the United Kingdom. My name's Alex Fraser, and on today's episode, we have Michael Sassano. Michael is founder and CEO of SOMAÍ Pharmaceuticals. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. Appreciate being here.
That's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you, and welcome to the United Kingdom's medical cannabis space, because we've only just days ago signed a contract for distribution for SOMAÍ medicines here in the United Kingdom. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's a long time coming, and we've been, working on the market for a while. So, being here at launch is a great feeling, and we hope to continue it throughout the year.
Yeah, we're very excited to see what SOMAÍ has planned for the UK, and maybe we can get into that a little bit later on the podcast. But I think to start off with, it'd be great if you can give us the sort of the top line, the introduction to SOMAÍ. Who are SOMAÍ?
There's a few sides to cannabis, right? You have cultivation, manufacturing, and then the end distribution of it. When you boil it down to the basics. And, SOMAÍ is the cultivator and is the manufacturer, and is working with distributors in the UK to bring the products to the doctors, patients, and clinics. So that's your top line look. It's the full vertical, and one of a few EU verticals in cannabis.
Yeah, not so many that have that completely tied up. You're quite right. Let's chat a little bit about yourself and your background as well. How did you end up at SOMAÍ, and what was your sort of career path into cannabis? I'm always fascinated to know how people get involved in this space, and why cannabis. Why did you choose to enter this space personally? I mean,
yeah, I mean, initially, when the United States was first starting off back in 2008, cannabis was just starting on a medical level. Later transformed into a recreational level. And one of the things that I noticed was that there was a need for more infrastructure for this industry. And so I got involved initially with investments and building the infrastructures. And since then, I've built 16 facilities, and SOMAÍ is number 16.
Wow.
But that doesn't include mergers and purchases. Just like recently, we just bought a cultivation. Ultimately, what I saw was the United States gave a great base. It was enjoyable to make all these companies and work through it. But I've also lived in Europe for the last 26 years of my life. And I wanted to get back, and I saw the opportunity to bring better products to the European community. And so SOMAÍ was born from that idea and desire to be a global player as opposed to state by state US player.
Yeah, I suppose the international market's obviously the biggest market, so it makes a lot of sense. I think those that are watching will be really interested to hear a little bit before we focus more on Europe and the United Kingdom, a little bit more about what you did in the United States. 16 cultivation facilities. That's incredible. I mean, I'm not sure there's 16 cultivation facilities in the whole of the UK, and certainly you'd have to go to Portugal for that number and think in Europe. But wow, I mean, what was your biggest success, I suppose, in the United States? I was reading a little bit earlier about Solaris. Would that be, for you, the jewel in the crown, I suppose, of the career so far?
I mean, that's the one I'm most known for. That's when I decided to go from investor and construction in making these facilities, and ended up deciding to operate and run my own facilities. I just thought I could do it better than what was happening at that time. As an investor, you have to make a decision: keep investing or improve it yourself. And so, Solaris was a great project. We ended up merging with the sanctuary dispensaries. And those exist still today, and keep actually growing. So those are based primarily in the Las Vegas markets, and then ultimately we ended up building projects in Oklahoma, dispensaries and cultivation and production. So it's not just cultivations; there are production facilities, dispensaries. Now the latest one, we applied for a New York dispensary license set in upstate New York. trying to stay away from New York City and end up in New York. But most of 90+% of my time is spent here in the global markets with Somai now. But yeah, they still exist, these companies, and as mergers keep going, you become less and less involved with the process as the corporations take hold.
Yeah, yeah, makes a lot of sense, and yeah, like I say, incredibly impressive work. I think it's very reassuring for those following the UK medical side that we are seeing that expertise from North America, spreading around the globe, into international markets, into European medical markets. Is that a particular passion for you? Is there if you had to pick for the rest of your career, you're going to do recreational cannabis, you're going to do medical cannabis, which way would you go? And we've gone off on a tangent already here, but I'm interested to hear the answer if that's not too pointed a question.
I mean, if you read any of my last stuff, I've become evangelistic to a sense on medical cannabis. It's more of a global tender, and it's a lot easier to understand as a pathway for countries than recreational. I would say, recreational is great in the format that it gives you a lot of insight what consumer preferences are, consumer performance, how to make the best products, how to deliver the best products. But from a medical standpoint, I've kind of coined it as a global medical cannabis explosion occurring around the world right now, as a matter of fact, and that this pathway is going to continue from country to country. And I think the reward on the producing pharmaceutical grade products that can be distributed to any country that's open to access to their patients is really a forever game, as opposed to a prayer or a wish to be recreational. I think there should be access granted to anybody who wants to use cannabis. But political winds just don't necessarily see eye to eye with what entrepreneurs or access advocates or myself would like. But I do believe medical cannabis is a wave of the future for a very long time to come.
It's interesting, and yeah, you're right. I think that the recreational side has really come forth in leaps and bounds in North America because there's that appetite for it, because there's a very strong sort of advocacy space there, I expect. But it's going to take a while, isn't it, for the rest of Europe? And I think that's a good thing for us on the medical side. It gives us time to establish markets here before recreational markets come on board. I suppose that's a really interesting topic. I could I'm going to pick your brains, Michael. I hope it's all right on these more difficult questions, but because you have this experience, this joint experience, and as someone obviously with experience in the US, is that a problem for medical markets? Is recreational potentially an issue for medical markets that haven't fully established yet?
I mean, I'll answer it, in the way that I can. Is it a problem? Well, I think you have three basic cannabis forms, right? You have pharmaceutical cannabis, Epidiolex, Sativex, Marinol. You have global medical cannabis, which would be exactly what we produce here. And then you have recreational. And I think, or adult use or over the counter, however you want to term it. I think there's a place for everybody, in the world. The key, especially for Europe and other countries, and imagine even more strict countries than Europe, Asia, the Arabic regions, they're just starting to look at things like CBD, and medical grade CBD at that, not just novel foods grade CBD. They're looking at three main events that are occurring right now in 2024 that could be the most significant events that medical cannabis has ever experienced. And, initially the UN had voted years ago to accept cannabis as a medicine. And years passed, nothing happened in any governmental form. At the beginning of this year, there was a 252-page report that was put out by the HHS FDA of the United States. And that report definitively said we had to fight for that under the Freedom of Information Act because it came out in August. We got it just in January. And it definitively said that cannabis is not just safe, but it's safer than the alternative pharmaceuticals, and went on to cite oxycodones, benzos, and things for sleeping. But then it said it had the least amount of possibility of overdose reaction, and not overdose as defined by death. We know that cannabis is not really there, but just by having an adverse reaction, had the least potential of that. And then it continued on to say that medical cannabis it is a medicine, and it can treat at least, keyword least, 15 indications, and cited neuropathic pain, Crohn's disease, and others for symptomatic relief. So this was a definitive report by the biggest health agency in the world that studied, and it quoted 6 million patients, 30,000 prescribing doctors over 2 decades. Probably the most significant database of cannabis ever to be correlated and then deemed safe. And then we've also recently seen Germany looks like it probably is going to take the narcotics derivation off. So another main country forging forward with decriminalization, and then taking the narcotics derivation, which means any GP can prescribe this. And then also it looks very imminent that the U.S. will reschedule from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which is common sense to anybody in cannabis, that cannabis is a medicine. But that acknowledgement by the U.S. government, that acknowledgement by Germany, and that report, well, that's a trifecta of medical regulators, treasure trove of information if you want to make conscious decisions to open up access. It would almost be unconscionable reading that report and seeing that and say, I would rather give my patients, my population, oxycodone than cannabis when you have a safer alternative. So I think regulators are going to really pay attention to these events, which all happened just this year or are happening this year. And medical cannabis will be the topic going forward for a very long time. The only question will be how much access countries will give it. You know, will the UK take off the try 3 times another therapy and make it a first, go to prescription? I believe they might. I think it's difficult, but I think, you already have countries like Spain, France, Czech, all saying we're going medical. And I think more will come. You'll just see people getting more and more involved with the global standard of regulations rather than prohibition.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was aware of all of those things going on, but when you pull them together, you're right. There's a clear narrative of the direction of travel here, isn't there? And the German legislation, particularly, I think everyone's focused on the decriminalization, whether or not we were going to get adult use markets. I think the answer to that is sadly not, at least in the immediate. But people don't talk about the narcotic side of thing, and that's really interesting. Like you say, it'll be much easier for their doctors to prescribe it. It'll be, it won't be seen as a controlled medical drug in the same way. I mean, we have that here in the UK. If you're a prescribed patient, prescribed cannabis, and you end up in hospital, it's in the CD, the controlled drug cabinet, so the doctors lock it away, and that's because it's a controlled drug in this family of other drugs that are typically very dangerous, and we lock them away from patients while they're in hospital because only that doctor or nurse should be administering and need to be monitoring these things. And we of course know that that's overkill, basically, isn't it? That's not necessary with cannabis because of, like you say, what that report is saying regards not overdose but adverse event potential. And it's really interesting when you put those things together. Let's talk a little bit about, as you did mention, what we're doing or what you're doing as Somai and the products that you're producing in the medical space. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How that happens, where that happens, and what's being produced, I suppose.
Well, from the manufacturing side, and this isn't myself touting our company. This is the entire global community of cannabis that's touting this. We have over 86 stabilized, extracted, formulated products and growing. And the idea, which sounds massive, but we'll be at 120 by the end of next month. And the idea behind it was that there's no one size fits all, and there's no one, this isn't the pharma model where you give them one pill and it cures everything. People have to try different things. Maybe they like the oral drops. Maybe they like a sativa oral drop. Maybe they like a hybrid oral drop. Maybe they like an indica oral drop. Maybe they like a spray. Maybe they like a gel cap. Maybe they like a vaporizer. Maybe they like a rosin vaporizer. Maybe they like a resin vaporizer. Maybe they like a terpene filled vaporizer. All of these advances are very, common to us in the United States, but making those into pharmaceutical grade products, making these products, stabilizing them, and then registering them as pharmaceutical grade products is a feat in and of itself. And that's what Somai did. And so we are bringing the most advanced and even the most basic products to all the countries. Some countries will develop more basically. They'll want, like Germany, it's a magisterial prep drop. There's very little differentiation you can make. But other markets like Australia and the UK, you can bring a faster absorbing excipient. You could bring a terpene enhanced solution. There's many different things you can do once you have a favorable regulatory environment that allows you to manufacture under EU GMP, but then also be able to deliver them to that country for prescription by the doctor, and so patients can get. So what I try to explain to people is it was very difficult in the beginning when we first started because there was no extracts. And so, if you ask somebody, what do you want? Well, they would say, well, we're making a crude oil drop. And I thought, very interesting. I've never even heard of that. And so, I had to scratch my head and try to think, is this a product that will exist in the future? Or is this some, as the word may say, crude adaptation for today? And so you present some patients with a product that doesn't taste great, tastes pretty awful, as a matter of fact, and tell them, this is good medicine for you. Well, I can show you every product in any U.S. dispensary, has a much better taste profile and a much better effect profile. So what is the difficulty of making a better product, pharmaceutical? Why does your medicine have to taste bad? And one European told me, well, we like our medicine tasting bad. I said, well, I guess when you go to a steakhouse, you order the bad tasting steak, don't you? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
And so, we had to make a progression of products so that people can understand and regulators can understand, here's your beginning products. And then here are more advanced products of what people are looking for and commensurate with what a $32 billion market has told everybody makes them feel better, makes whatever they're trying to fix feel better. And so doing that was kind of, let's say, the labor of love of Somai, is to continue and keep making more advanced products for these pharmaceutical markets as they start. And then just recently, we just bought an indoor grow, which had the cookie strains. So we're bringing the cookies strain lines to the markets of Europe. We also have the AeroPro Vape global contract. So we're bringing the AeroPro global, the AeroPro Vape, which is the #1 vape manufacturer in the United States, probably one of the best performing vapes by terpenes and different processes. And so Somai was the clear winner for that in order to distribute the AeroPro products throughout the globe. And so these are the things that define us and separate us from the pack and make what we call a vertical into a power-packed vertical of products that people absolutely desire and want and will want as they get more educated as to what the better product is.
It's fascinating what you said earlier about the crude oils as well. And I think I speak to patients in the UK and have similar conversations wherein they say, oh, it needs to be a certain color or it needs to be a certain flavor. And what they're describing is it needs to be crude. And I think it's just because there's a familiarity with that. Perhaps they've, seen these things in the illicit market. Perhaps they've seen these things in other places, but you're quite right. There's a smarter way to do things. Why would we not make a product that does everything we want it to do medically, but also tastes good? There's we absolutely can do that. Just because it hasn't happened prior doesn't mean it's not possible. And I think that's what's fascinating about a company like Somai. You're looking at what works, what's preferable, and then putting that pharmaceutical sheen to it that makes it make sense to regulators and means we can launch these products. And I think we have to pay attention to the experience of consumers, but there is also a point where we have to say, okay, but do we need to do it that way? Can we not be smarter about it? And it's great to hear that there's that extra level of thought going into things. I'm interested in AeroPro. I'm a big vape geek. Is that on the cartridge side? Is that a dry herb vape? What's the situation with AeroPro?
AeroPro is a extracted vape line with probably the most advanced terpene mixes I've ever seen in my life. They're famous for them. They also have a technology where it's a magnetic rather than a screw top, and it's a vibrating magnetic vaporizer, which helps to count how many puffs you're taking in, and they're not only is their performance out of this world with how they've designed their vapes, but their breadth of knowledge of different terpene formulations. I've never even seen an inventory IP vault like this. And I actually make vaporizers in the US, and I used to buy AeroPro vaporizers. Still to this day, when I go back, I buy the AeroPro vaporizer as opposed, to my own vaporizers, because they just have put so much technology into it. And so when we were able to they chose us and they did a lot of due diligence on where to go. And we had made 28 different vaporizer formulas, in stability. And they said, wow, like most people do one or two. The funniest one was somebody showed me in Germany a crude oil vaporizer. And I just thought to myself, wow, I just never even thought to even make that for anybody. It wouldn't even have come to my mind to smoke fats and lipids, into my lungs. So, trying to bring a better experience with better performance to people, I think is going to be very simple, because like I said, there's a $32 billion market out there that said, hey, this is exactly what makes me feel better. And so people just have to learn, what's better. And I think a lot of times just people don't have the manufacturers, and especially the gray market, they're disadvantaged with equipment, and they're disadvantaged with the technology to make something better. And they make something that's good, and there's many great products made in different formats from different people and different groups, whether you're in the legal markets or not. I think there's fantastic products that people make in their kitchens and their garages. But if you come over to here, the equipment that's needed to pull the terpenes out first, to extract and get it right and make it the same every time, to pull out and purify out things that are damaging to your lungs, create bitter tastes, things like that. Imagine a flower, terpenes are created by either positive events or adverse events. And so let's say a plant is attacked by a bug. Well, the cannabis plant is an incredible flower. It will send out a different scents and create different terpenes to ward off that product. Well, do you necessarily want to smoke that because the plant was fighting to get a bug away, whereas the natural plant itself may not have created that terpene profile or those trichome profiles that you're looking at. So you have to ask yourself, was the plant meant to be like this, or was the plant meant to be better? And once you come to that and you get you can understand the equipment to make it, well, the processes become very simple. And then, you have to worry that you'll produce a product that doesn't bleed out, like vaporizers. I've seen 30% failure rates in Australia for early form vaporizers because people got excited, bought a Thompson filling machine, and then started squirting oil in it.
Yeah.
And everybody forgot about pressurization, oxidation, capping structures, And so in the United States, if you have a 1% failure rate, you're out of business. They just never go back to you again. And so these are things that have to be learned. And it's not just about equipment, it's also about know how to do it. And that makes a better experience for the patients. People don't want to spend a lot of money and then end up with a broken cartridge.
No, they definitely don't. And it's interesting that that percentage is so much lower in the USA, where, obviously in a non-pharmaceutical market, but those standards are still very high, and great that we're bringing that to the pharmaceutical market here in the UK. And it's obvious from how you talk about this that you're hands-on throughout the production process. Obviously, founder, CEO, you're at the top of the tree, so to speak. How does that work for you on a day-to-day? What's your actual day-to-day life like? If you don't mind me asking, I think it'd be interesting to our viewers to understand what a founder and a CEO of a producer like Somai actually does day-to-day.
I'm extremely dedicated to this, to cannabis in general. And I've spent years in the back of the grows in my early days. I'm on my way to the grow tomorrow to look at the different plant, to look at the different stages of the plant, to improve the plant, cycling. I lived downstairs with the production teams, with these specialty products, creating more products, going forward. I've tasted every product. Like, is that the right taste? Is that the right taste profile? And then a lot of what I'm doing today is I like being out there talking to the doctors and the clinics and explaining to them what's coming. And I would say a majority of today, rather than a majority of yesterday, was with all the product people, training everybody up, working with the different QA, QC teams. And now I'm in the field. I just got back after a month and a half out in Australia and Asia, talking to all the different groups out there, the doctors groups. And when I present to them what we're bringing, and I try to explain to them, well, these are single strain extract lines. We have many of them. I could bring you this one, I could bring you that one, but trust me, I'm bringing you a good progression. And then talking to them about the different terpene profile products that are coming, and explaining to them, soft gel caps and their usages, sprays and their usages, what faster absorbing means, and showing them the data behind white papers and in vivo and in vitro trials. Well, and they are used to just some brand that's white labeling out of who knows where, and they're just buying the next extract at the cheaper price and then putting it into a bottle and calling it a 10 for 10. Or, people making products with trim. Well, all of our products are made with full bud flower. So I'm able to drag out and that's quite incredible. Like, that doesn't even exist in the US market. But if you want to get a market authorization in countries and you want to get your product into Germany, well, there is no derivation for trim. You have to make a full bud flower. And the benefit to that is you will have a minor cannabinoid profile that is out of this world, because ground up, degraded flower is going to give you a good THC and CBD profiling, but your minor cannabinoids are going to hurt. And for sure, your terpenes are going to be almost nothing. And so, making a quality product like that and watching the doctor's eyes light up and say, wow, nobody ever told me that this was possible in an offering, is probably the biggest rewarding thing in working with the sales teams to give them confidence. And they walk out of those meetings and they're like, I don't even need to sell for the year. You just sold all the doctors and clinics after all these travels with me. And I said, well, look, now we have to service them and make sure they're educated on the products, because me explaining what's coming down and being able to bring 3, 4, 5 products every single month, well, that's a very tricky thing for marketing. That's a tricky thing for documentation for doctors.
Mm.
And that's a tricky thing for salespeople because they're only used to being said, here's the 1010, sell that.
Yeah.
Well, I have 14 versions of 10 for 10s. So how do you bring that out in a very concise way? And that's what we're doing right now. And it starts with a few products. We could call them Me Too, but they're really not Me Too. And then they just go into things that don't even exist in your markets.
Yeah.
And, different terpene profilings that don't even exist. And I think you're going to really get it. Your eyes will be opened once you start to experience them. And we want people to try all different kinds of products and find the right one for them.
It's music to my ears, to be honest. There's a huge amount that's not available in the UK market yet. You're teasing us a little bit there, I can see, but and I know there'll be people watching who'll be excited to see what Somai have got to come. But that idea of launching the products in stages that make sense to the clinicians rather than throwing them a basket or just giving them one thing or another thing, that speaks to me a lot. But I think you've got doctors in this space now that are much more experienced and getting used to this and sort of waiting for the next thing. And there's a few things they're aware of are available in other markets, frustrated they don't have them here yet. And you've got other doctors here that are very new to this still and will need that. Here's a 1010 and maybe a high THC or a high CBD, and you can get started with that. So that's fascinating. You mentioned marketing authorization as well. I'm gonna come back to that because for those who are watching in the UK, that would be the route towards NHS licensing, reimbursement, and getting medicines formally approved via that whole system. Is that on Somai's sort of game plan at all here in the United Kingdom? So it's such a difficult question to to put forth.
I can answer it in this way. The United Kingdom has their special access program, which is our foray into it. But a country like Portugal is following the EU herbal pharmacopoeia straight to the T almost. And so we have what's called an ACM, which is an authorized, is an authorized medicine for Portugal. So we're used to that process. Our regulatory team I think we're doing 20 ACMs just this year.
Wow.
So we're very used to making these applications. Maybe France will be like that also. So I think, as we develop more and start to get, a feel for what the patients really want, and is it the basic products or is it the most advanced products, I'll be able to zero in and say, you know what, I think an authorization for this product will be the one that fits that market. Because every market is different in stages of growth and different in stages of knowledge. And I have to just learn what's that stage for this country. If I was to say Australia, I'm just bringing out all the advanced products as soon as possible because they're already differentiating. And I thought, okay, well, I'll bring you something you don't have. And so we'll just bring those out quicker. And so each country is different. And I think for the UK, I'm going to do a tour there of all the different clinics in about 2 weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks. And I'm going to get a better feel for what line might be the best one to take a little more towards clinicals or observationals. And I think definitely the terpene 10 for 10 lines that will come out as in 3 months. I think those ones will really change the face of the extract market in the UK and might be where I want to do my observational trials with T21 and try to work with groups in order to show the difference and what the performance and what people feel. And I think that's an area to start. And then you could go towards market authorization should you get a little more empirical data under your belt.
It's understanding the lay of the land here, isn't it? And I suppose it is early days still for Somai. We're yet to launch a product at the point of filming, at least. Maybe by the time this comes out, I think there might be some Somai products on the market. But it's also reassuring. I think whilst you're teasing us with exciting things to come, and I think we want that as soon as possible, as typically we would. Both I think clinicians and the patients will be watching. But it makes a lot of sense to be playing this game gently and not rushing into things and not bursting into the scene in the UK. You couldn't you, in theory, with the basket of products that Somai has, you could turn up and you could launch a lot all at once if you wanted, but it wouldn't be smart. It would be much more difficult to gauge what was meaningful, what was important, and you can certainly overwhelm clinicians with that as well. So I love the whole tactics around this. I'm going to touch back to something you said earlier about the production, where you were saying you were using sort of the top cola, the best parts of the bud, not the trim, to produce medicines. And I think that's hugely reassuring for patients. I think it's I say a criticism. It's a concern that I think patients have, that they're not getting the best of the best product. Is that something that you can reassure? I suppose from everything you're saying, it sounds like Somai are committed to not cutting the corners, not doing the easy work. It's not just about sales, is it? Everything you've said so far probably does reassure that, but it'd be great to hear a bit more about that, if that's something you can touch on as a sort of, I guess, a mindset, or a way that Somai does business.
Yeah, look, the pharmaceutical is very clear. There is no fudging it. So either people do not have a single strain and a consistent single strain, or they have what most groups have. They throw a lot of different product into a bin, extract it, and then they have no consistency. So, this is inherent in our registrations and in our filings, which are as clear as day. Every single line we have is a repeatable single strain line, and the machinery we have can turn every single extract from this one to the next one to the next one will be the same. So it doesn't change. Go look through our paperwork. It's all there. And so this isn't just a commitment, though. This is exactly what the market wants, and exactly what the market in every market wants. Every market, whether it's the United States or others, wants single strain dosages and consistent supply. And they don't want people to throw a bunch of product, grind it out, and call it a 10 for 10.
No.
You will never get a market authorization, and some have tried in Portugal. It will never happen. Your variation will be so extreme, you will never conform perfectly to a pharma environment. And so this was designed, Somai wasn't designed for the UK or Germany or Australia. It was designed for every global pharma market. And so if you don't follow those rules, well, there's going to come a market and they're going to say, no way, we're not letting you in. And that's just a fact. And France is going to be very strict. You can bet on that, and they are going to look at things very closely, just like Portugal looks at them. And you're not going to get around, trim derivations and a lot of things. So our money was put where our mouth is. Our extract products are as they are. We tried to simplify it with a hybrid line, a sativa line, and an indica line. But I think, like we have so many more extracts, I think as time goes on, I'll have a little bit more fun, and I'll be able to do a Thai line or a Moroccan line or a Colombian line or a South African line. And I think that will be more fun and fulfilling for people to have products from around the world with different extracts and different form factors. So, we'll see what time does. But keep in mind one thing. Our production team does not stop. It doesn't matter if our products make it to you this week, next week, or the next week, because the next generation's already being made today. So that comes again. And then the next generation will be made after that. Our production schedule is set for multi-countries to receive the products in a very organized fashion. So regardless of what the market's going to do, we will keep delivering new products every month on the dot. And okay, maybe it takes a month to register and bring in, maybe it takes two, but they'll be produced and they'll make it there. And it'll be this whole year, you'll have a continual surprise. What is Somai coming out with now?
The ball is rolling and it's not going to stop at this point, is what you're saying.
It can't stop.
The machine is working.
Yeah, but everything is dependent on that. One of the problems is people run out of product and they do what's called just-in-time ordering. They go order their cannabis. they extract it, and then they make it, formulate it, qualify it, and send it out. Well, that's 3 to 4 months minimum if you're good. And so what we're doing is avoiding the inventories, and we're making continual product releases in large amounts to each country so that all of them can have inventories building, and then newer products coming out. And then we can reassess after 6 months, where's the big sellers coming in? What are people really interested in? And then we'll start to repeat and adjust.
I'm getting this picture that there's this granular level of assessment of consumers, of what can be produced and made and what's needed by different markets. And then there's this behind that. You've set Somai up in such a way that it can be reactive, it can produce all of these things for all of these markets, and it can hit regulations in all of those markets too. You mentioned France being particularly strict, and I agree. I think they certainly will be. They've done 2 or 3 years of a pilot trial, and now they're proposing legislation that's not going to include flour. It's going to be quite restrictive, I think, in terms of who can get a prescription. But you also mentioned Asia earlier, and we never talk about Asia because it seems Asia's like the future. It's like not quite caught up with the cannabis side yet. But you mentioned that you've been doing some work out there, and I'm curious to hear what that looks like. Obviously, Australia's a little bit ahead of the UK, Germany not too dissimilar, but what is Asia like to operate in for a company like Somai? How are you thinking about that market?
So on that side of the pond, not that it's Asia, but it's Australia. This is one of 3 of the largest markets for global medical cannabis today, and probably I would say the most advanced global medical cannabis market currently out there. More advanced than Germany for sure, because Germany's still flower and magisterial prep, non-differentiated extracts. Even the experience in Australia is quite amazing, where you can have and I've done this a few times. I've gotten, when I land, I go and I get I get my prescription from the doctor. They call me, and I'm able to pick up my medicine that day with it. And I did one of these in 15 minutes, from call to pick up in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And so this patient experience of getting what you want on that moment is quite incredible to have. And I think this will be a telltale sign. But Europe and Asia in general, sorry, to answer your question. So you have CBD markets like South Korea and Japan, although Japan is going to we'll hear the laws in the next few months, but it'll be something like Epidiolex, maybe Sativex, and then a cap on THC for CBD. Because I walked into a bar in Japan and I was able to buy CBD over the counter.
Really?
Obviously, gray market, but they're all over the place, CBD. So they're going to put laws behind that, and they made that foray announcement 2 months ago. So that will come out. We'll know in a few months. Nobody knows the exact definition. Other markets in Asia are also dabbling in CBD. I think Asia and other Arabic countries will look towards CBD as probably a precursor to the higher forms like THC for their markets. And then you have, in the middle of nowhere, Thailand, and this is
amongst islands.
I mean, they have 13,000 dispensary licenses. They have 8,000 grow licenses, and probably 2 to 3 times that in gray market street vendors. I went to go buy a chicken sandwich at night, and the chicken sandwich guy was trying to sell me cannabis. So this is like if Walt Disney was Asian and was given carte blanche to make a recreational a program. This is what it looked like to me over there. There was specialty bars. You could, every kind of bar you can imagine to smoke cannabis in, so, that's another extreme. And I'm sure they're going to try to clamp down for, let's say, to save face with some of the more strict countries like China and Singapore, which don't want to see that. But I think the genie's out of the bottle there. And you'll see more and more countries in Asia adopt a CBD first and a THC next policy. But I don't think anybody's going to ever see a Thailand again. I think that's the most amazing access program I've ever seen. Now, their quality has to build up, but okay, that always takes time.
I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned the question earlier about recreational markets potentially limiting medical markets, and I suppose what I hear from Thailand on the medical side, from what little I hear, to be completely honest, is that yes, it is a veritable Disneyland of cannabis at this point in time because how liberal their access is. Great, describe it perfectly there. But the medical side seems to have barely taken off at all there. And it's fascinating that, again, sort of through the grapevine, I'm hearing regulators who are more interested in putting forth a medical market there, but feel that there's going to be no interest now because it's too liberally accessible. Perhaps it's not, of interest to anybody looking at Thailand to do it in a pharmaceutical route as it stands, because, why try and enter a market with a product that with such high regulatory standards when they're not necessary? I suppose what's the payout for that? The competition's too easy. Is that fair to say? I mean, what is Somai thinking about Thailand as a sort of a medical cannabis producer in a nation state that's fully on the recreational, very liberal side of things?
I mean, I didn't know what to expect when I went there, and I was going there to just check it out because I was on that side of the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went and they offered me to do a speech, and I got up to the podium and I figured it out a few minutes before I was going to say it. And I looked at them and I said, there is nothing that I have to sell to you. So what I can show you is if you want to be inside the global markets and the global pharmaceutical market, I will show you something that you will never see for the next 2 to 3 years. And I proceeded to show them the inside of Somai and all the equipment that it takes, in order to make these products. And when I was done, at first there was, a numbing silence, and then there was, wow, we didn't expect that. And I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. But your market is so far on the recreational side. I don't think the genie can ever go back into the bottle. And regulators may want to do something, and the Asian countries sure can clamp down if they want. But if you saw what I saw, I mean, I'm not betting on it. What I can do, though, I hope to have a nice Thai line. I hope to make a Thai extract line when they can export. I hope to find I would like to get one of the old genetics they have 5 really great ancient Thai genetics. I would love, and I saw one of them being made in an indoor facility. And I was like, how ingenious to take what was made outdoors and make it in the indoor facility with controlled environment. And I thought that would be really great. And you do have conglomerates there, really wealthy groups that want to get to the EU markets and bring the Thai stick and those kind of products. And I think there's a place for that. Definitely people know those names, and they're definitely classics, even though they've been, hybrided out over the course of time. And the new products are great also. But sometimes these classics made in an indoor setting really can be wows. So I think that's more where we'll be looking for Somai, is to bring a flower and an extract line to the markets based on the Thai growing, rather than trying to penetrate with our medical products. And look, they can use better quality, even though edibles are not legal there. One is a miss, one is too much. Definitely the dosage forms were off. And it's just, the edibles never really, the gray market never really perfected the confidence in edibles, because although it's very easy for us to buy a bag of flour, because we can look at it, we can smell it. It may not have a COA, but we're used to that format. It's a little different if you're ingesting it. And people really want to know, is that dosage exact? And the U.S. has been very clear about that. Still, the legal cannabis industry is really dominated on the edible side or vaporizer side. People want those branded products. But on the flower side, there's still a big proliferation of great product from the gray markets. And I think they could use a step up in Thailand with their extracted products.
Fair. I was going to say it's almost the reverse, isn't it? Whereby it's not about bringing product to Thailand; it's about seeing what can be done in Thailand now with the level of or the lack of, I suppose, regulation or just the type of regulation that they have, and then what can be produced there that would be of benefit to the rest of the world. So it's so interesting. We're having this is by far the most international conversation we've had on a grow conversation. So and it's brilliant to get your expertise from all these different areas of the globe and the work that you're doing in these different places. I just want to touch on and lastly, I suppose before we round things off, I want to touch on Portugal a little bit, and because that's where you are growing, isn't it? That's where Somai's sort of base of operations is for Europe. Is that correct?
Yeah, the manufacturing and cultivation is here in Portugal. The know-how obviously came from the U.S. and the teams here are all pharmaceutical executives and pharmacists. So trying to meld those societies where I try to explain to a QA and QC team and the head of production, who is ex-vice chairman of Infomet, our regulatory agency, trying to explain to them what a vaporizer is and try to get that passed. That was very difficult. And so, this was at a time when they weren't even in the market and we were making these, because obviously when we're making a product, from the day we make it, there's time to develop it, then you make it. Well, it's still about 1 year till it's going to be in the market due to stability and testing and all of that stuff. So you really have to have a lot of advanced planning, and they just, scratch their head with vaporizers for a long time. So, yeah, here is your pharmaceutical manufacturing and cultivation side, and then it's disjointed sales groups pocketed in each country. So like Australia has 4 MSLs, salespeople, going around to the various clinics and doctors. I'm out there with them. I just got back after a month-long trip. UK, there's 1 MSL right there who's started, plus the groups to help us to reach them out. But a lot of the clinics know us and know what's coming. Germany, it's 2 separated deals where we invested into Grünhorn, a 10 million 2-year deal on extracts, and then Canify, the old Tilray team, a 2-year 5 million euro deal. These are the 2 largest extract deals. Well, they're the 2 only and largest extract deals ever announced in the whole EU. So most people were doing consignment deals, and these groups came in and they really wanted the Somai portfolio, even though all the products cannot make it to Germany. Poland, obviously, we're looking for the approval any day now. We're any day to a week to 2 weeks away, so that's an any day now approval. And then we have all of our follow-up products coming through, so that's on its way. And like you said earlier, France and Spain are going to be extract only markets. Well, we dominate that space. There is nobody close to us in extracts, at least for the foreseeable future. And so we will be all over that. And I think, as opposed to Asia, I came back and I told my team, I said, it's nice to have a flag for CBD out there, but we're really not CBD guys. We're really THC guys. And we got to stick to those guns. And let's keep our focus on Europe. That's our backyard. And if we have extract only markets, we should be dominant players in those. And that's where our focus will remain, probably for the duration of the year, is European based, and Australia, of course.
It's incredibly exciting. There's clearly so much on the cards for 2024 in Europe, in Australia. Obviously, the rest of the world will I'm sure, in time. I mean, in the UK, there's I suppose an idea going around in the sort of patient forums that the producers that bring the best products to the medical market here are Canadians. And I've been trying to find the perfect example as to why that's not strictly the case. There's not something magical that happens in the air in Canada, or and that it's just that expertise from these pre-existing markets, not just Canada, but North America. I think the States is, it's limited in terms it can't export. So that's, nothing's coming from the States over to Europe, but in terms of product, but the expertise is, and, we find yourself at the top of Somai doing work internationally with a focus on medical, a focus on pharmaceuticals, talking about market access. It's everything I want to hear from someone in your position as a patient advocate in this space, as someone who's passionate about progressing this field in the right direction. So, and my God, it sounds like you're incredibly busy too in all of these markets, doing all of this work. So I thank you so much for your time. It's been eye-opening. There's so many things I wanted to ask you I haven't been able to fit into the time that we have today. So maybe we'll meet again at the end of 2024 and we'll do a recap and we'll see how everything's gone for Somai. But for the time being, I just want to say thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for being on the show. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed listening to us chat away about all things cannabis all around the world. And we'll see you on another episode very, very, very soon. Thank you, Michael. Thank you again.
Yeah, Alex, this is a big pleasure, and there's never enough time to really, preach the word. And as I've become really evangelistic about global cannabis, global medical cannabis growth, I'm going to just stay on that pitch for the next year. I do not see it changing, and I'm going to be very happy to revisit this with you. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're really going to enjoy bringing a different dimension to cannabis to the UK population. It's going to take some hard work and some education. I know that I can convince the UK doctors to come down for a tour and see our facility and enjoy some good fish and some good weather and some sunshine. So I know that I'll be, junketing some groups down here. I want to welcome you or anybody that's close to you to come over here and do a tour. We're extremely proud to show this off, and you can. I'll let you choose which single strain product you want, and I'll launch one specifically at your desire, whichever one you like.
Oh, that's more than I could ever hope for, to be honest, Michael. I mean, that sounds fantastic. Maybe for the next episode we'll come and we'll film a little bit of the facility. Maybe we'll do an interview then and there in Portugal with you. But that would be amazing, and I look forward to seeing the facility itself. I look forward to seeing doctors being educated and informed by your expertise, and I look forward to everything that Somai has got set for us for 2024. So thank you again, and thank you everybody for watching. We'll catch you next time.